What's up, everyone? This is another study on a 2018 Dodge Caravan. Came in with a knocking noise, and I think it could have been easily mistaken for a rod knock. What kind of set the noise apart, though, between the engine and the transmission for me was when I basically put it in gear, it changed frequency, kind of to me indicating a transmission side issue, not an engine side. Usually a rod knock isn't going to give you a big change in frequency between in gear and in park. So at that point, the first time I had seen this, I think I had seen a technician at another shop actually recommend the engine, got the engine out, went and transferred everything over, and then ended up seeing that the flex plate was cracked. And the in play on the crankshaft was good, in case you're wondering. But anyways, I had heard that noise before in the past, and that's kind of something that comes with experience, is, trying to remember all the things that you've seen and heard, which is really difficult for anyone to do. So that's why I'm not a fan of people trying to learn how to be a master technician in like 2 or 3 years. I mean, that's just not possible in my opinion. But anyways, so I pull this van in. I proceed to, look at the basics. No damage, anything like that. No signs of an accident, nothing grounding out somewhere. So at that point, I get it up in the air. I pull the cover off to access the torque converter bolts, and I see rust, and I can't really see anything with the engine transmission all bolted up, but I just kind of knew from the location of the noise where it was coming from roughly. And then I think, if I wanted to, I could have unbolted the torque converter bolts from the flex plate, pushed it back, and then, started it that way, since the starter teeth are part of the flex plate. So doing that, in theory, should cause the noise to decrease or go away. So anyways, pull the transmission out. This is what I find. I find a cracked flex plate, which you see in this picture here. And at that point, I think, most of the time I just would have put a flex plate on it, new bolts, put it back together and let it go, if the in-play on the crankshaft is okay. And when we're talking about that, there's 2 things that you really need to look for on a cracked flex plate. You need to look at the torque converter for bluing or discoloration, indicating that the transmission was overheated and the fluid got so hot, and the torque converter got so hot that it expanded and pushed on the flex plate too hard, which flexes to an extent, hence the name, but it can crack it if it flexes too much from transmission overloading. So that wasn't an issue on this one. Torque converter was not blue. Next thing you want to check is the crankshaft in-play. The reason you want to check the crankshaft in-play is because if you have too much in-play, same thing can happen. The crankshaft moves forward and backwards, torque converter is attached to it, flex plate. Now it's moving so much that in-play and movement of the crankshaft is causing that crack as well. In this case, and in a lot of my cases with the 3.6 engine and Chrysler vehicles, you don't see excessive in-play usually. It's pretty rare, and you usually don't see bluing of the transmission torque converter causing this. But anyways, moving on, I looked at the crankshaft a little bit closer, and I noticed that there was some wear on the crankshaft, and I'm going to circle it right now, but I ended up seeing that, and it should be perfectly flat. And what I worry about now is that, hey, is this going to cause a repeat failure in a year or two? Is it going to cause the new flex plate to crack? And if that occurs, well, obviously, be doing the job all over again. So not wanting to jeopardize the quality of the repair, so it's still under powertrain warranty. I get approval to put a crankshaft in it. Surprisingly, one's available. Kind of hoping that the short block was my option, or a long block, rather than replacing an entire crankshaft, because that's a lot of work. So at this point, I pull the crankshaft out, And this is a look on this exact engine that I'm talking about that I was working on. This is what it looks like with the crankshaft out. It's a Y block, so like a small block Chevy is not a Y block. It's basically flush with the crankshaft. In this case, there's a tone wheel, some main bearing caps that I took off. They're 6-bolt main bearing caps, very strong bottom end. The Pentastar 3.6 is pretty hard to wear out on the short block side. Heads are a different issue. Here's the parts. I use that for a parts cart rather than throwing stuff on the floor. I don't think anybody wants to see their car parts, their engine parts on the floor, and I try and keep everything covered up. This is a new crankshaft with the tone wheel attached, and it was bent. The tone wheel was damaged during shipping. If I would have replaced that crankshaft and not caught that, I couldn't just, replace that tone wheel that's bolted on. For one, it's balanced with that tone wheel on there on the crankshaft, so you can have some vibrations if you just switched it out. But the other thing is, there's no easy way other than removing your crankshaft that I'm aware of to get that tone wheel off, even if you wanted to. At that point, I probably would have bent it straight, and then the other thing is if it was bent like that, would have had a misfire code or a crank position performance code. Maybe it wouldn't even start, but I've seen this once or twice, but bent tone wheels, and it causes usually a misfire code. So anyways, that is this case study on a knocking noise for a 3.6 Pentastar and a late model Dodge Caravan. And I think that's about it on this video. We're going to actually maybe even talk about the bearing sizes, something else I wanted to mention. So the lower end of the engine, like a lot of modern engines, you have multiple bearing sizes. So the main cap lower bearing would be smaller or larger possibly than the upper part of the main cap bearing for the crankshaft. Rod bearings can be different sizes, and it's pretty important that you get the right size bearings on there, but we're talking about less than 1/1000th of an inch difference in the bearing sizes, but it's all etched into the side of the block, and you really have to take your time to make sure that you get the bearing sizes right if you're going to replace a crankshaft. Pretty important. Thank you.